So our next topic is called Can You See Me? It'll be presented by David Dadoun and Marwan from the ALDO Group. International guest speaker, data evangelist, and university lecturer, David leads the business intelligence, data science, and data governance practices for the ALDO Group. Over the last 15 years, David has advised a broad number of companies in the selection and implementation of BI tools, strategies, and roadmaps. Marwan has more than a decade of experience in data analytics in sectors including consulting, telecommunications, human resources, and retail. Actuary and member of the Society of Actuaries, he is passionate about mathematics, statistics, and computer science. He is currently the Senior Manager of Advanced Analytics at the ALDO Group and leads a COE that focuses on business value creation through analytical deep dives and ML modeling. Please welcome them to the stage for their talk, Can You See Me?
Hi, everybody. We're good?
Hi, everyone.
You know what the best part is about presenting after a break is that everybody's like doped up on caffeine, so there's less chances of them like falling asleep during your talk. We're gonna have a bit of a hybrid talk. There's the business aspect, but we're also going to go into some of the technical stuff because we figure you guys are at an AI conference. Maybe you wanna hear some technical mumbo jumbo as well. But before we start, my wife thinks that, I kind of just went on a boys' weekend to New York. So if you don't mind, I just want a quick selfie. Oops, wrong way. I can do this. See, I can't even operate the camera. All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now to actually get this thing started. We're going to talk about different topics, and really this is just an agenda. I believe the slides will be made available, and you can review that agenda by yourself. I don't need to walk you through the points. But we want to share with you our journey to enter the whole world of visualizations from a computer vision perspective. So who is the ALDO Group? You guys know us? ALDO? Yes? You guys are all wearing my shoes? Right here? Shameless sales pitch. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of feedback so you understand a little bit about our company and how we continuously innovate and continuously change, and we like to transform and evolve, you'll notice that the ALDO Group was founded in 1972. So we're already 40-plus-year-old company, 40 years young, if you'll say. And in 78, we opened our first freestanding store. Now, 78 is a really important year for the ALDO Group because that's the year I was born in, right? So everybody was very fascinated by that. We expanded internationally. We opened our first store in the US around the Boston area. We launched different brands. We then started to go into the whole e-commerce world a long time before e-commerce was necessarily popular, specifically from a transactional perspective as it relates to shoes. People have always said, you need to try the shoes. You're not going to buy a pair of shoes if they're not comfortable. But we felt that there was still a need for us to evolve in that space, and therefore we did. And that's part of our nature, to continue to challenge the status quo, to continue to evolve, to continue to grow. We know that retail is in upheavals. We've seen it. You guys have all felt it. You're all in the retail space. So I'm not inventing anything new. If you don't transform, if you don't embrace, you're not going to grow. And at some point, you're going to become obsolete. So we've done that in 2005. We launched offices in China. We developed an entire strategy around being consumer-centric, personalization. We created CRM teams, consumer insights teams that conduct research to better understand our consumers so that we can better target them and provide them with the goods that they need when they need them, however it is that they want to have them. We also launched SAP, and for those who have gone through an SAP implementation, you'll understand why it's on this slide as a milestone, because it hurts a lot. But it's done and it works, and we're happy. We had a really successful go live, actually 3 of them. The last one was a month ago. I'm still alive, which is a really good sign. And just because we care, in 2018, we were the first fashion footwear company to become climate neutral. And for us, that's something that's really important. We heard Linda talk about sustainability and being involved, with the community at large and the environment and the world, and that's something that actually matters. So we've done that, and we were the first company to be certified as climate neutral. Today, the ALDO Group is a rather large enterprise for those of you that don't realize this, but we have operations in over 100 different countries. We have over 3,000 locations where we sell our products. That's huge. That's absolutely enormous. 20,000 associates worldwide. Can you imagine the amount of data that gets generated and how exciting that is for a company and for people like us who work in the whole data science space? We have 3 main brands, the ALDO brand, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. We have a store just here on 5th Avenue, like 2 blocks away that we went to visit before just for fun. Call It Spring, and Globo, which is more of a local brand, family brand up in Canada that hasn't expanded yet. Those are just a few points to share how much we care. And we don't just say it to say it. We are a family-owned company. We are a family-run company. We are still private, even after all of those years and this massive expansion. If you look at the pins on our lapels, they're the ALDO symbol. And if you were to actually flip it over, engraved behind those pins are the 3 core values of the ALDO Group: love, respect, and integrity. And we don't just say it to say it. We actually put it in action. Right? Just with all of those things, you'll notice that we want to make a difference. And you can be a profitable company by still making a difference. Now, as it relates to us, you heard our pedigree. Sounds very, very fancy, the whole, what we do for a living. In reality, who we really are, well, I have 2 really cute little boys, right? They're adorable. One of them thinks he's a boxer, which is kind of cute. The other one thinks he's Darth Vader, a little less cute. Yeah, you're laughing, but when you put your son to bed, you go upstairs, you close the door, and then you just put your ear against the door, and you're 4-year-old, and all you can hear is da 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 da. Yeah, my son puts himself to bed singing the Imperial March. I love everything on 2 wheels, and you'll understand why that actually matters. Hockey is the one true sport. Can we agree? Canada's its home, right? Thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, basketball too. So just in case you guys, hey, we won the Stanley Cup, and okay, fine. Look, St. Louis won the Stanley Cup, but 17 of the players were Canadian. So just so that you guys share about that information, right?
So a little bit about myself. So as mentioned in the introduction, I started my career as an actuary. So I've studied actuarial sciences, and I would say, it was fun. It was amazing. It's a great experience in terms of statistics, mathematics. But what was missing for me, and that was really a big thing for me, is computer science. So slowly, I decided to, that piece was missing. I wanted to train myself and, had some education in computer science. And this led me to data science. So I've essentially joined the ALDO Group 3 years ago. And we've done so many great things, like mentioned in the introduction. I lead a data science team that act as a center of excellence within the organization. So, we touched different projects. That could be from inventory planning to product that you'll see today, to markdown optimization, a vast scope of project. As a personal note, I do have a 2-year-old son. It's amazing. People used to warn me, be careful with the terrible 2 age coming in. And I'm like, it's not that bad, but I feel it right now, and I kind of understand them, actually. It's pretty bad. In terms of, whenever I have some extra time, I love anything that has to do with finance. Trying to beat the market these days is pretty hard. And contrary to David, I love everything with 4 wheels and actually not 2.
It's about 50% discount. I'm going to go with the markdowns and get 2 wheels instead of 4. So let's talk a little bit about our journey, because I think that's something that everybody's interested in, seeing how we've done this and why did we decide to go down an AI project as a retailer. And there are many reasons why you would want to do this. But one of the things that we need to be cautious about, and Gartner loves to throw out their statistics and say that 85% of everything you do is going to end up by failing, including AI. So when we decided that we were going to embark on that AI project, we decided to have a framework as to how are we going to select what we're going to be working on. And from a business perspective, that's uber important, not to just start something to start it. It has to drive a certain amount of business value. You don't kick off a tech project to kick off a tech project just because the technology is cool. I love tech. Marwan loves tech. We all do. But if we're not going to have an outcome that's going to drive an actual business result, what's the point? We're not doing anything for anybody. So we always have these 4 pillars that we focus on with this one main guiding principle, which I wanted to share with you guys. First of all, we look at the potential revenues that could be generated by this initiative. So that's one of our criteria to decide whether or not we're going to embark on an initiative. We don't embark on it before we do these things. So we look at the potential revenues that could be generated. We look at, is it going to be a cost reduction initiative? Is it going to essentially help us reduce our footprint? Are we going to be able to deliver? So what's the complexity? Do we have the people in place? Is it complex just from an infrastructure perspective? Is it complex from a data availability perspective? Because some projects, you won't be able to kick them off if you don't have access to that data. And then we also ensure that we have the right sponsors supporting the initiative. You can have the greatest idea in the world. If you are not capable of having somebody within your organization at the right level support and evangelize your project, it's all for naught. It will not come to fruition. So you want to make sure that those 4 components are covered, and at different levels. You'll rate your projects differently based on wherever they fit within those things. But we also look at one main guiding principle, and that is to follow the P&L. We look at what's going to have the biggest bang for our buck. We all have limited resources. None of us have 200 data scientists sitting around just waiting to do something. You've heard it at other talks as well during this conference that they have backlogs, they have work to do. How do you choose the right project? Well, you choose it based on these different items. And in our case, you remember I said everything good starts on 2 wheels? In our case, a couple of my really fun projects in the last year started on a really cool motorcycle ride. So I went out with my CEO and a couple other VPs. We shipped our motorcycles out to Oregon from Montreal, and then we flew out and we literally motorcycle rode all the way down the coast into San Francisco, visiting stores. And we would stop at different stores and we would ask them, how are they currently working? What are they doing? What are their pain points? And honestly, it was eye-opening for me. I got to learn a lot about our store operations. The truth is, the best way for us to understand how our stores work, how our business works, is by going to visit them. They know this stuff. They know this stuff better than we do, sitting behind our offices, at our desks, behind our screens, building models. They're there every single day. Visit the stores.
And in fact, we just went to a store visit this morning, and we came out with a list of things, we wanted to bring back to the head office. So it's a great experience.
Absolutely. So, if you're in retail, if you're in something else, you may not have stores, and so find a different way. But that's kind of how we came up with some of the ideas. And one of the things is, we have this fantastic app in our stores that allows associates to be able to scan requests as people walk into the stores to essentially find out whether the product is available or not. And so they're in the store, I'm with the associate, and the associate shows me how it's working. And so we have the app, and he's scanning this fantastic little shoe over here, and it's not available, right? I ask for my size, it's not available, and therefore it recommends an alternate product. And this is what it recommended. Products that were not good enough. Products that may not lead the customer to buy. So how do we improve that? And that was a recurring theme. That was a recurring theme that happened throughout my different store visits. And we decided that this was a problem we needed to tackle because it would improve revenue, it would follow the P&L, it would build on our AI culture. It essentially hit the different pillars that we wanted to hit. Plus, it was going to be a really, really cool project too, so that was going to be fun. So every vendor says that they can do AI, right? Every single one of them. Now, the question is whether they actually do AI or they don't. And then the question is, do you build or do you buy? Because you don't necessarily need to build everything yourself, you can go and buy it. But one of our guiding principles is that if it could end up by being a core competitive advantage, then we may want to keep this a little bit closer to our core, and we may want to actually retain some level of control over the algorithms and over the way the data is then going to be processed and shared, right?
Definitely.
So how did we do this?
All right, so how did we do this? So essentially, this problem was a computer vision problem. So we wanted to start this from the beginning. The old model we used to have was rule-based, and it was doing, not so great. We could have decided to go that way, but we went over the deep learning model and a computer vision optic for many reasons. Like David mentioned previously, we ranked this project. It ranked very high in that format that we just went through, and we had amazing sponsors as well. So first of all, computer vision, I'm not going to do a session here on deep learning. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with the topic. I know though this is like the business kind of, this is the business area, so I just want to make sure people are on the same track. So we did use deep learning here in neural network. Neural network is a branch of machine learning. Essentially, the way this works is really it's mimicking the brain in terms of functions. In theory, you have the dendrites and you have the different neurons that function that way, and it's a set of weight. But what's really important is there's this input layer that feeds in information. So like I mentioned, we're talking about computer vision, and in theory, every picture is a bunch of pixels, right? So you take that pixel, you flip it into an array, feed it into that model. And where the magic happens is in that set of input layer that goes through. So these sets of input layers start to detecting the patterns. And one thing that's worth mentioning is when you train this model, you kind of tell the model itself, this set of array of pixels that I fed in, the output is a dog or a cat or whatever it is. And the sets of input layers start to find those patterns, those common patterns. And that was crucial. So, I mean, that's what we used for the model. And essentially, we had access to a bunch of data. Unstructured data, which is the purpose of this, computer vision. But we knew, David just mentioned, we went through a massive SAP implementation. It was a lot of work, but the good thing is we end up with very clean data. And we knew that in some way we wanted to tap into this data as well. But let's start with unstructured data. All those different issues were what we faced from unstructured data. But then, from a structured data perspective, we had access to product attribute. And in our database, every single product has over 100 different product attributes. You can think about that as high level, the department, making sure this is a boot versus a shoe or a sandal, but also the gender. Is it for special occasions? What's the color? What's the material? And so on. Now, even though we went through an SAP implementation, we do still face data quality issues, and we've seen that once we start looking at the data, something we had to bypass it. Correlated attributes. So there's a lot of out of those 100 attributes, there's a lot of attributes that are really saying the same thing. So we had to kind of bypass this. And obviously, customer versus business attributes. So a lot of the time, give you an example, a ladies' pump, for example, could be classified as ladies' pump in terms of silhouette. But for a specific season, it could be classified as occasional, because that's the trend these days, right? But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So that was not other issues that we faced as we went through the process. Now, so bear with me, this is honestly the most complex slide that we'll go through. It's the high-level architecture of what we built, but I believe this is the core of everything that we've done. So essentially, we use the concept called transfer learning. And the idea is, I'm not going to do a full training session on transfer learning, but think about it as taking a model that's actually pre-trained. So that neural network that I just showed about in the previous slide, it's a bunch of weights. And as you feed in images, it starts to optimize those weights to predict the outcome. So we took a concept of transfer learning where we took a model that's actually pre-trained, a model that you see here, and we fed it with an ImageNet data set that essentially is not focused on footwear. It's 1,000 classes of different product, from animals to product to humans to anything, right? And the idea is this model had great accuracy into predicting different things. But what we did is and the infrastructure that we use for that is Python, open source, Keyrus as the wrapper on top of TensorFlow, which is the library that was used. Okay, so this is where it becomes interesting. So we take an image, which is a bunch of pixels. We feed it into the model. And instead of getting the outcome, which is most probably is going to be a shoe, right? That's what the model would predict at pretty high confidence. Mm-hmm. We're like, that's not interesting for us. What we want to see is really, what that model actually, what's the pattern that it saw within that shoe, right? To be able to say that it's a shoe. So is it the fact that it has laces, heels and so on? And we don't need to define that because as the model is trained, it's detecting those patterns by itself. So what we've done, and this is an encoding process that we went through. So you feed in the image and you take really the final, the outcome just before the prediction. And what we've done is we've iterated through all the 70,000 images that we have in our data set, and we were able to then create, think about a data set where you have all the different product IDs, and then the encoding of every single images. From there, we're able to create product clusters. So what you see here essentially is a clustering based on those encoding of the pictures that tells us, and which is like the green is the handbags, then you have ladies, and you have some overlapping between ladies and men. This is the unisex kind of footwear that the model is not able to differentiate really, is it more lady or is it more man, and so on. And in addition to that, this is where we start computing nearest neighbors. So for example, based on Euclidean distance, we're able to, in that n-dimensional space, calculate the difference between the distance between different products. And be able to do things like, feed in an image without any attribute and get the styles that matches the most in terms of distance, purely on the image. All right, so an example of the outcome of this computer vision model. So that pair of shoe that you see here, out of the box, the model would give us those top 8, right? And we have an array of pretty much everything that we have in our assortment. Now, this could look good, but we faced immediate challenge. And we had many discussions with our director of the application that David had, where we tried to test this out of the box. And then there's things like, well, this is a ladies' casual shoe, and the first recommendation is a man casual shoe, even though they look quite similar, but it's a complete different category. So we came in with this concept of there's rules that we're going to embed with our product feature that I just talked about. That is a set of common sense rules. Make sure, first of all, it's not the same product. So things were happening where you would have the ladies pump, and we do have different colors of our assortment. So think about a ladies pump in red, and you would recommend the black one because in terms of features, that's what the model seems as the most closer to that. But we wanted to give, to enrich our recommendations. So things like that were immediately removed. And then there were things like, make sure it's not the same, like it is the same department. So that first man shoe is not going to be considered because, it's a lady shoe that I wanted to get a recommendation for, and so on. So it goes through a process where, the first set of recommendations are cleaned up to make sure we just stick with the one that makes sense. But then, after having those multiple discussions and testing the app, we started to realize, well, you know what? If let's say we have a snake shoe here with a snake skin, perhaps the customer is really looking for that type of feature. Versus if I have a very classic ladies boot in black, make sure to give me something that fits in the same type of color, but has the same features and same silhouette. So depending on what you're looking at, you might be recommending different things. So this is where we integrate the concept of points that we've put on top of the initial recommendation. And the whole idea behind this was make sure to penalize for things that don't match and make sure to reward for things that match. And we've done this at a cluster level of product to match and product to recommend. So it gets somehow complex, but the beauty with that is, based on the feedback that we're collecting from that proof of concept that we've made, we're able to optimize this set of points. And at the end, we can get something like that, which essentially remove anything that doesn't make sense and re-rank all the product in a way that does make sense. All right, and so the same picture that you saw, actually, the screenshot that was taken was when we were doing A/B testing. So we were testing the app with the new recommendation and the old one, and that same app in that same store, the new recommendation is what you see here in that same size. So pretty
Significantly better.
Yeah.
Significantly better. See, and it's even a happy face. Now the thing is, I always like to challenge Marwan. As you can tell, he's pretty smart, right? Like it's pretty impressive the way his brain works. I don't understand, but that's okay. That's not my job. But I always like to challenge people, and I want to challenge my team to always go a little further. And so I asked Marwan, it's great that we can show similar styles. But what if we wanted to go a little bit further? What if we wanted to push that idea and say, similar styles are great, but what about cross-selling? What if I wanted, a beautiful pair of ladies' silver shoes, because you don't want to know what I do on Saturday nights, that's a different story. But what would go well with this model? So, feed the image to it and give me a recommendation.
So, and that was tricky because, like I've said before, our goal with the similar style was to provide same category product. But how about if we switch this and we say, you know what, force it to give me an accessory, for example? What would come up as the first best recommendation? And what the model spits out over here is this particular handbag, and if you notice, the texture is pretty much similar. Now, obviously, this is a proof concept. It's still in test, and there's no stylist that went through making sure that this does match. But these are ideas that we're experimenting.
Correct, and it's great. It's working for women's, but I also wanted to see from more my perspective, like as a guy, what would the model spit out? So if we were to look at a different pair of shoes, like a pair of loafers,
yeah,
what would you propose?
So the best, what the model would propose as the best belt would be something like that. And again, it picked up on the features and the texture of the actual model, of the actual product.
So ultimately, what we're trying to say is that You always start off with wanting to leverage data for operational excellence. And you have a ton of data. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do within your companies just with the data that you have. We're not utilizing data from outside our worlds right now. This is data that we generate, we control, we own, we can govern, and we can master. So you start with your own data, but start with a business opportunity. Again, don't decide that you're going to build a visual recognition model just because. Build it because you have a problem you're trying to solve for. Don't start the other way around. So you have a business opportunity, you emit some hypotheses as to how you're going to resolve this. In this case, well, what if we could build a similarity model using visual recognition? Because we know that a black high-heeled pump can look visually very different than another black high-heeled pump. Therefore, attributes may not be sufficient. So you emit your hypothesis, you go out, you gather the data that you need, you discover the insights, you share those insights. It was really interesting, the data relay race talk yesterday. I don't know if you guys heard it, but I fully agree with this. It really is like passing the baton. Once you gather those insights need to be applied, they need to be implemented. But it's a closed loop circle. You continue to learn, you continue to improve. Our model is being deployed in our stores right now. It's being tested, and we're going to continue to iterate, and we're going to continue to evolve. It doesn't just end there. Now, there's a lot of other really cool places where we can apply this model. So when we thought about the scalability, right, there's always the aspect of scalability and where else could you apply the projects you're working on. We're starting to look at how can we use it from a quantification perspective to help us estimate potential demand for products that would look similar to previous products. We're trying to figure out how we're going to be utilizing this on the web. And in fact, I believe we're already starting to work on that deployment and deploying that onto the web. And imagine from a data quality perspective as well. People are the ones that are creating the attributes and entering the values, right, for a product. What if you could have that model go back and pull up the styles based on these images and then cross-reference and identify where there are potential issues or potential inconsistencies in between what the human entered as an attribute versus what the machine is actually seeing. In which case, we are then going to be merging human and machine in order to provide even better quality data, which goes full circle and is going to bring us back to that whole loop of operational excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.